Didn't I tell y'all? Didn't I tell y'all that Lawrence was so for all y'all that were commenting and sending me private messages talking about I'm slandering Lawrence, here's your proof. Lawrence is a whole nigga. And it's just like it ain't shit, dude. To try to come back to you when his life ain't going right. Trying to sniff up on you while you comfortable eating your sandwiches and shit with your feet up. Now he want to come back. Boy, bye. But anyway, what's up, y'all? This is Insecure, Season 4, Episode 3, Lowkey Thankful. I actually want to start this episode by apologizing to Molly. Now, Molly, I know you're a fictional character, but I called you all kind of names, and I may have suggested that you had killed your dog, and I'm sorry for that. I mean, we still haven't seen him yet this season, but I'm sorry for all the things I said about you that were negative. I was wrong, girl. So we're going to get back to Molly later, but what does Andrew do for a living? I rewatched the second episode, and he answered the phone at 9 o'clock at night, and the conversation was like, yeah, that's on Tuesday, yeah, bye. What kind of job calls you at 9 o'clock? Is he Hitman Bay? That would be kind of sexy, though, if he was Contract Killer Bay. He did have a ponytail. Okay, so the next thing we see is Lawrence and Remote Controller in bed, and Lawrence is asking her about her plans for the holiday, and she tells him what she's gonna do with her friends, and he says, oh, well, I should step my game up, and she goes, oh no, you're perfect. And I'm like, girl, is he perfect? Girl, you just don't know. She don't know about the fake IDs, cases in Virginia, and body in DC. Ay, bow, bow, bow. Okay. Sorry, I just break out into song all the time. But anyway, so the next thing we see is Lawrence and Chad. They're in the car together, and they're talking about Lawrence possibly losing his job because he had an issue being seen by the investors or something like that. And it's revealed that his company is actually downsizing, but he feels like his job is secure. Not really, but I mean, one can pretend. And one of my first thoughts was, if Lawrence loses his job, how will Remote Controller take it? Because everything she knows about him is based around him having a job and being a black man working, a quote unquote good black man. And since he's trying to keep up appearances, I wondered if he'd be more willing to work a menial job for Condola the way he wouldn't do with Issa until he could find something else. Because keep in mind, he didn't start working at Best Buy until maybe the last 3 or 2 episodes of that first season? Trifling ass. Ooh, I can't stand people talking about Lawrence is such a good guy. Ugh, that gets on my nerves. Like, good where he is a loser. But he was fine, though. He was fine as hell in this episode. Okay, so the next thing we see is Lawrence runs into Issa at some little food shop, and then Remote Controller shows up. And it's kind of awkward because as Issa is leaving, she sees them hugging kind of all over each other. Later on, she tells her brother that she's pretty sure that Lawrence was going to pay for the food, and that's something he never did for her. So the episode segues into Molly and Issa at the grocery store picking up their items for Thanksgiving. And Molly asks Issa if she thought that she should invite Andrew to her family's dinner. And Issa hits her below the belt and says something to the tune of, don't invite him because old Molly might show up and scare him away. Oh, and Molly mentions that Asian Bae and her are exclusive now, so good for you guys. They didn't play that out on the show for some reason. That's a conversation I would have liked to have seen. Okay, so back to Issa and Molly at the grocery store. That conversation that they had was so uncomfortable. And this is one of the reasons I actually apologized to Molly. That, and I watched the Grapevine the other day, and they did an episode about Blackish and colorism, and they mentioned that Molly doesn't get a lot of empathy or sympathy. And I was like, you know what? I think you guys are right. Because Lord knows I've called Molly all kinds of names, and I feel bad for it. And actually, when I was like reflecting on all the things I've said about Molly, I realized that Molly actually is not that bad. What happened for me was I watched all of the seasons. I binge watched all of the seasons. So I was like exhausted of Molly. But now that I'm thinking about it, Issa has never been a good friend to Molly. So I'm gonna have to just backtrack on everything I said previously. And we can argue about it in the comments for real, but seriously, what has Issa ever done for Molly? I can count maybe 10 things off the top of my head that Molly has done for Issa. Let's go. She took her out for her birthday, right? Twice. She covered for Issa when she was trying to hide Daniel from Lawrence. She scared off Crocodile Bay or Lizard Bay when he was trying to come back with them stupid flowers. She has given her rides. She has bought her food. She let her stay at her apartment. She let her wear her clothes. She showed up to Issa's career day to be a speaker. She donated to her charity. She drove her home to see Lawrence when she was mad at her. Remember, they were on vacation, or they were at somebody, I think it was Kelly's birthday, and she drove her home at like 3 o'clock in the morning. What has Issa ever done for Molly? Not a damn thing. Let's argue about it. So for Issa to come at her like that in that grocery store, I was turned all the way off. I was like, why would you throw Dro in her face? You know she misses Dro. And so do I. But that was just below the belt. That whole exchange was just messed up. And at the end of the conversation, they both acknowledge that something is off between them, but that Issa will probably still come by for pie. Okay, so the next thing we see is Lawrence and Remote Controller. They are preparing for her Friendsgiving, and he's trying to make a good impression by helping her around the house, and he offers to fix her sink. And this is why, ladies, this is why you do not build a man. This is why. Because you become the come-up woman. He's going to take everything he's gained from you and take it to somebody else. What did Kanye say? Once he gets on, he leaves your ass for a white girl. I say, once he gets on, he leaves your ass for a remote controller. Issa spent all that time working with him and building him up and supporting him, and he couldn't even let her get a little dick on the side. He wasn't doing nothing. Just let her get that side dick and shut up and play your game. Gee. So the next thing we see is Issa and her brother, and they're heading over to their family's dinner. Now, this is the first time we've gotten to meet their family. So we don't get to meet their actual dad, but we get to meet their stepdad, Stanley, and then their mother, who I believe her name was Regina on the Steve Harvey show, something like that. But I can't remember her real name. So we see them, and he's getting taken off into an ambulance, and I laughed so hard when they thought it was their mom going in an ambulance, and they started running. But when they see it's Stanley, they're like, oh, never mind. And I had always wondered why we never got to meet Issa's family, but now we know that there's a disconnect there because their parents divorced and her mother has remarried, and they don't like the new guy, Stanley, and then his twins that are adults. Next, we see Molly at her family's Thanksgiving, and her and her mother are having some conversation, and her mother is crying a little bit, and she asked her if she was dating anybody, and she shows her a picture of Hitman Bay. And she goes, is he Korean? And I was like, you know what? That's a valid question because we don't fuck with them. And if you have to ask why, you may never know. But Molly's mom offers her some good advice. She says something about like, don't overthink the relationship. And if it's for you, then it will be for you. And I was like, thank you, Mom. And I think Molly is kind of starting to come into her own a little bit and starting to realize that you can't force things to happen. And that's just the way of life. You can't force a relationship. So now we're back at Remote Controller's house, and everyone is sitting there and they're having like after dinner dessert and drinks. And it's mentioned that Remote Controller is not really interested in getting married again. And that bothers Lawrence. I guess he thought it was real. I'm gonna just say I really hope that she plays him out because we all know that I don't like Lawrence. But anyway, eventually one of her friends takes him into the kitchen. She actually reveals to Lawrence that Remote Controller is really just looking for something casual right now as she's getting past her breakup with her ex-husband. So he's like, oh, word? Oh, I thought this was real. Oh, damn. So Issa and her brother are having their own Thanksgiving at some restaurant, and they're having a heart-to-heart, and they're talking about him and having to kind of stay in the closet a little bit around the family, and eventually they talk about her and her feelings about Lawrence. And she mentions that she feels a little slighted that she was the one that held him down, but Remote Controller is now the one reaping the benefits, and she's a little salty about that. And her brother assures her that that's okay to feel that way because you know, obviously. But it was cute seeing their little scene because we don't get to see them together that much. And then when we do see them, they're usually kind of playing the dozens and being silly. So, yeah. And at this point, I feel that Issa is over Lawrence, but she just obviously feels a little salty. But even if they were to get back together, I don't feel like they would have a lasting chance because there's too much bad blood. She cheated on him. He used her. You know, he's a whole different person with this new woman. I just don't see it happening for them in the long run. So that's just kind of my feelings towards it. And actually the episode wraps up with Remote Controller asking him if he still has feelings for her, Issa that is, and he never answers the question. And since it's now known to him that Remote Controller is not interested in being married again, you can see in his face that he's starting to think back, well, maybe me and Issa could actually work out. And as the episode ends, he's scrolling through Instagram stories and he sees one of her and her brother together and they're just being silly and he's laughing and he leaves her a smiley face. He didn't leave a smiley face for anybody else that he was looking at but her. So to me, I don't know, it's just kind of weird because at this point, Lawrence has dogged Issa so hard, so it would be better for him to just try to move on with someone else. Obviously, Condola is not interested in a serious relationship right now, so he should just move to the next one and let somebody else deal with his mess. The end. So that about wraps up this episode. Sorry, I'm actually a little sick, so my energy is down and my voice is a little weird, but one thing I would have liked to see in this episode was more of Asian Bae. I wish he would have came to the dinner. That would have been really fun to see the dynamics of him being there and then their relationship being so new, and then she's not even really getting along with her family that well. So that would have been fun to see. The episode was really great. Again, I would give it probably another B+. It was really funny and entertaining, so I'm glad that they're not playing that crap that they did in the last season. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments and I will see you guys for episode 4. Bye.